I'd like to get to the task at hand, which is getting out that vote and turn it over to our dear friends at the League of Women Voters of New York City and Diane. Thank you for being here, Diane.
Absolutely. Thank you, Leanne. And what we're going to talk about today is how to become civically engaged and make sure that everything you need to know about this upcoming election and what's going to happen after the election, everybody has the information they need. So we'll talk about the ballot initiatives and we'll talk about your voting plan. So first of all, welcome and thank you all. We are the League of Women Voters of the City of New York, and we are a 103-year-old organization. And we're still doing the same thing we've done for 103 years, and that's engaging voters and educating voters to what we all need to do to use our voice and use the power that we have with our voice. So let's get started. So we are here today to share ideas as to how we can engage and participate in order to influence and affect change, especially here locally, right here in New York City. And this presentation is an overview of the 3 important pillars of how we can affect change. And the 3 pillars that we're going to talk about today are voting, lobbying and advocacy, and community involvement. So where does this power come from? We have this power as voters, but where do we get this power? Under our form of democracy, of course, we all know we have 3 branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. But the power of the government is granted by us, we the people. It is the people who give power to the leaders through the election process. We the people, the first 3 words of the Constitution. So we have rights and we have responsibilities granted by the Constitution and by the Bill of Rights that enable us to engage in this political process, beginning with the most basic of our responsibilities, voting. And of course, participation in the election process. Here in New York, as in every other state, election law is written by the state legislature. For many people in America, unfortunately, voting rights have not been easy to come by. And we are still fighting, literally fighting every day to maintain and advance the right to vote, unfortunately, in far too many places right now in the United States. Most recently in Arizona, where the League of Women Voters just won a case that will not allow people armed to come to the poll site to poll watch while armed. And we won that. So that's an important victory for the League of Women Voters and the United States. So let's start with that first pillar of voting. And when we think about this pillar of voting, the first thing we want to think about is that we don't like to think about the idea of just asking people, are you registered to vote? That's only the first step. What we like to do, and what we hope you all will do when you go out into the community, is to talk to people about making a voting action plan. And so instead of saying, oh, are you a registered voter? Say to folks, do you have a voting action plan? And a voting action plan includes several important steps. Obviously, number 1, the person needs to make sure they're a registered voter. Secondly, they need to make sure they know all the important dates and deadlines. They need to know their poll site. They need to know how they're going to make their voting decisions. And they need to know where all of this information is accessible. So let's take a little deeper dive into this. First of all, here are some important resources, and you might want to take a screenshot of this slide before I move on beyond it. But these important websites help people in New York City find out information about where, when, and how they can vote. The first one on this list is vote.nyc. And this is the Board of Elections website. And we're going to refer to this as we move through tonight's presentation. But this is sort of the be all and end all of all the information you need to know when you're getting ready to create your voting plan. For folks who need to register to vote, and of course it's too late for this election, but the Department of Motor Vehicles, for folks who already have a New York State driver's license, they can actually register to vote and update their information at this website. Turbovote.org is an organization that is sort of a hybrid, and it allows people to start the process of voter registration online, because in New York State, if you don't have a driver's license, you have to do it pen and paper. But this gives you the opportunity to start it online. They mail you the form, and then you can complete it and mail it in. Of course, we at the League of Women Voters are a good resource, and we encourage you to join us and be with us as we work through all of this important work. And then Vote 411 is another League product that I'll be talking about in a few minutes. So basic information, of course, right now it's too late for this election, but we do have another really important election in 2023. That's our city council. So anybody who is not registered to vote yet should access the websites I've just mentioned and go ahead and get registered to be prepared to vote next time around in the 2023 city council elections. Now, the other important part of registering to vote that we really want folks to understand is the idea of choosing a political party. In New York State, we are what's called a closed primary state, which means the only way you get to vote in a primary is by becoming a member of a political party that holds the primary. So looking ahead to 2023, hopefully it'll be in June, we will be having the primary for the city council. If you're not a member of one of the political parties, Democrat, Republican, Working Family, or Conservative Party, you won't get to participate in the primary. Now think about that for a minute. I remember the last city council election in my district, we had something like, I don't even remember, 9 or 10 Democrats running for one city council seat in the primary. Now, if I had not been a party member, I would not have had the opportunity to vote in that primary election. So we want people's voices to be heard. We want the power of the people, we the people, to come through. So we really encourage folks to join a political party. Now, the next step of your voting action plan is to make sure that you know all the important deadlines. And these deadlines are strict, written in stone deadlines. And as you can see, we've already gone past many of these deadlines for this election, but we are still in early voting. So you still have today, well, tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday to go to your poll site for early voting. And then, of course, Tuesday is election day and the last day to deliver your absentee ballot or postmark your absentee ballot. Now, if you're not sure where you need to vote, you go to vote.nyc, which is the Board of Elections website. Now I'm just going to click over there for you for just a minute to show you. And it will show you, if you scroll down, it will tell you where you can go to vote in your primary. So it'll say, find your poll site. You click there. You just have to put in your house number, your street name, and your zip code, and it will show you where your early poll site is. And then if you scroll down, it will show you where your election day, Tuesday, November 8th, poll site is. So very simple, very easy. It's not necessarily the same place. You might be voting early at one place, and then election day might be a different location. So very important to keep track of that. The next part of your voting action plan is to decide who you're going to vote for and what you're going to vote for. When you go to vote.nyc, the site I just showed you, when you put in your address, it will show you your sample ballot. Now, your sample ballot may be very different from somebody else's sample ballot because we are represented by where we live. So if you live in a certain district in Brooklyn, your ballot is going to look different than somebody who lives in a certain district in Queens or in Manhattan. So you want to look at what your sample ballot is. Once you know who's running, then you want to figure out, who am I going to vote for? And what we need to do is focus on the issues. What is it you care about? What are the issues that concern you in your community? And look at what the candidates stand for who are running in your community. The League of Women Voters, we have this website. It's a national website called Vote 411. And I'm just going to take you to it for a second there. And what you do is, here we go. I had it set up so we could go right to New York. And what you do is you can actually find out what's happening in your community and what's on your ballot just by going to this site. You can also, of course, and this is nonpartisan, in other words, we do not take positions on candidates or political parties. So we are a nonpartisan site. You can also go to a partisan site. So for example, the candidates themselves, their websites, or the political party that you feel most aligned with, go to their website, and they're going to give you information about the candidates that you get to choose from. Now, in addition to all of that, who we're going to vote for, we also have on this ballot proposals, ballot proposals. We have one state proposal and we have 3 New York City proposals. So let me just share a little bit with you about this. So the statewide ballot proposal is actually a bond issue, and it's called the Clean Water, Clean Air, and Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act of 2022. If you want to take a screenshot of this website, that will take you to a lot more information about this particular bond issue. Now, here is the way it's going to look on your ballot. And again, this is a statewide initiative. And it's going to say this: to address and combat the impact of climate change and damage to the environment, the Clean Water, Clean Air, and Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act of 2022 authorizes the sale of state bonds up to $4.2 billion to fund environmental protection, natural restoration, resiliency, and clean energy projects. And then it will ask the question, shall the Environmental Bond Act of 2022 be approved? And you get to say yes or no. Now, importantly, all of these ballot proposals are on the reverse side of your ballot. So what we say to everybody, and what we want you all to say to everybody you're working with, is flip your ballot. Flip your ballot. You go through all your candidates, choose the candidates, flip the ballot over, and that's where you're going to find these proposals. Now, this proposal, the statewide ballot proposal on clean water, clean air, and green jobs, the League of Women Voters of the state of New York, we do endorse this proposal. So take a look at it yourself, see what you think, and vote accordingly. In addition to that, here in New York City, we have 3 amendments to the New York City Charter, which of course it's our version of the Constitution, right? It's the New York City Charter, which is basically the New York City Constitution. These 3 ballot proposals come from the Racial Justice Commission, New York City Racial Justice Commission. And the 3 proposals are, you can find them here. And again, you could take a screenshot of this page if you would like. And I will talk about these three proposals briefly. The first city proposal will add a preamble to the New York City Charter. And this preamble will be an introductory statement of values and vision, aspiring toward a just and equitable city for all New Yorkers. Now, we are not voting on the actual wording of the preamble, but we are voting on the aspirational aspect of, we want a preamble that is going to aspire toward a just and equitable city for all New Yorkers. And that will be, again, on the back of the ballot as a yes/no question. The second New York City ballot proposal, again, coming from the Racial Justice Commission, will establish a racial equity office, plan, and commission. This will require citywide and agency-specific racial equity plans every 2 years. The plans would include intended strategies and goals to improve racial equity and to reduce or eliminate racial disparities. So it will be an office, a plan, and a commission. The third ballot proposal from the city will be a measure of the true cost of living. And what this is going to do is it's going to amend the city charter again to create a true cost of living measure to track the actual cost in New York City of meeting essential needs, excuse me, including housing, food, childcare, transportation, and other necessary costs without consideration from public, private, or informal assistance. In other words, this will be a way to inform programmatic and policy decisions based on the true cost of living in New York City. Now, all of these are fully explained at racialjustice.city of New York right here. So if you want to take a screenshot, the League of Women Voters of the City of New York, we have endorsed all three of these ballot proposals. But again, you know, do your research, figure out what you think, and then flip your ballot to find the three of them when you vote. And each of these will be a separate yes or no. So part of your voting plan, right? You figured out that you are a registered voter, you know where to vote, when to vote, how to vote, you know your poll site, and you know your voting decisions. So the next step is to help other people. And we really encourage everybody to share this information with family and friends, you know, reach out to people, help them get to the polls, help them find their poll site, and get involved in ways that you can really activate your community. It's a little late now to become a poll worker for this election, but the Board of Elections is always looking for new poll workers. We really need a lot of folks helping out at the polls. And with the primary coming up in June, if you're interested in becoming a poll worker, again, just go right back to vote.nyc and you'll be able to sign up to volunteer to be a poll worker. It's a paid position and they pay pretty well. So you might want to do that. So we've talked about the first pillar of civic engagement, voting. So now let's turn our attention to the second pillar. And this pillar is lobbying and advocacy work. Now, you know, you think about it, we've already elected, let's imagine for a moment, we've elected all of these new elected officials. They're now sitting in their office, but our work is not done. We elected them because they said that they supported the issues that we care about. But now we have to hold them to that. Now we have to make sure that they are responsible to us, we the people, to do the work that we set out for them. And one way we can do this is through lobbying lobbying and advocacy work. And there's a difference. Lobbying is when there is a specific piece of legislation that's already working its way through either the city council or the state legislature or nationally. And it's a specific piece of legislation that you believe either should be passed or you oppose and should not be passed. And you have the right and the obligation and the responsibility to reach out to these folks who we just elected and tell them what you think. Email them, call them, go reach them through their social media contacts and let them know what you think. Advocacy is similar, but with advocacy work, it's not a specific piece of legislation, but rather it's an issue or a concern in your community. For example, you might have a concern about gun violence, and maybe there's not a particular law that's being written right now about addressing the issue of gun violence, but you want your elected official to know how you feel about this issue. So again, you can reach out, email, call, show up at their office, make an appointment to make your feelings known, because that's your right and that's your responsibility as a voter or as a member of the community even. So before we do that, we have to figure out who's the correct official that I need to approach about this. So if I have a concern that's, let's say I want, more trees planted in my neighborhood, I'm not going to reach out to my senator in Washington, D.C. about planting trees in my neighborhood. I'm going to reach out to my city council person or my borough president. So we have to know who to reach. On the federal level, maybe my concern is about war, or maybe my concern is about taxes or Social Security or Medicare or any number of issues that relate to the federal government. For those issues, I want to reach out to my elected senators, my elected congressperson. If my concern is a state issue, so education, transportation, in New York, it's the state that controls our MTA, not the city. I might have a concern about state taxes. I might have a concern about other issues that are statewide issues, criminal justice reform, for example. For these issues, I need to reach out to my state assembly person, my state senator, or the governor. But on the local level, this is where our voice can be the loudest, because on the local level, we are dealing with quality of life issues. We're dealing with issues of, I want more trees in my neighborhood. I want my library improved. I want a better park for my kids. I want, transportation locally. I want congestion issues addressed. I want gun violence addressed on a city level. And for these things, I'm going to reach out to my city council person or my borough president. So this slide just gives you an idea of how crazy this can all look on the city level. This is the flow chart for the mayor's office, and it looks crazy, right? But we can learn to navigate it. And here's how. In New York City, we actually have 2 levels of government. We have our citywide elected officials. So I can reach out to the mayor, who is really the chief executive. I could reach out to the comptroller on any issue that addresses finance. I can reach out to the public advocate, whose issues would be anything that requires advocacy for me, for the public, for all of us. They're the sort of the eyes and ears of the public. We can use this portal 311, and I'm just going to click on it for a minute to show you. 311 allows you to look at any service that you need that will make your voice heard. So you can report a problem. And if you click on that, it will actually take you to it's not doing it right now for some reason. It will take you to a menu of all the various here we go. of all the various problems that you might want to report. So look at this: noise, illegal parking, maintenance complaints in my apartment. And all of these things you can access through 311. Then we have our second lower, more local level of government, and that's our borough-wide. So we have our borough presidents and our city council that we can reach out to with concerns and issues we might have. And the League of Women Voters, in conjunction with the Graduate Center of CUNY, we have this wonderful product called mygovnyc.org. You might want to take a picture of this. When I click on this, let me show you, this is fabulous. What you do is you simply enter your address, and I'm just going to type in any address. Here's one in the Bronx. And what it's going to give you is everybody who represents you at every level of government. So I can see city government. Here's the city council person with the district. And notice you have phone, email, website, Twitter account, Facebook account, all different ways you can access your city council, your community board, your borough president, district attorney, your citywide representatives, all of them with all of their contact information. Then going back up to the top, you can click on state, who represents you on the state level, and it's going to give you the same information, your state assembly person, your state senator, and again, with all the contact information so you can reach out. And then of course, also on the federal level, who your House of Representatives member is, who's your senator, and it's all here with all their contact information for you to reach out to them. So very, very important that we have access to all these elected officials who work for us. They work for us, and we can reach out to them with all of our concerns. So that's the second pillar. So we had voting, first pillar. We have lobbying and advocacy, our second pillar. And then our third pillar is, how do we in a community make a difference, even if we're not eligible to vote, even if we're not a citizen or we're not old enough to vote? There are still ways that we can participate and become active members of our community and civically engaged. So one way we can do this is by participating in things like our community boards. And you can go to this website, sign up to become a member of your community board. Participatory participatory budgeting is happening right now, where we as a city, as members of our communities, have the opportunity to decide how city money is going to be spent. And you can participate in that by going to this website. I love this picture. I took this picture because this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. My neighborhood was filled with trash. It was disgusting. Trash all over the sidewalk, all over the street. And then our community board and other local members of our community got together and got our city council person in Council District 5 to buy new trash cans. And the trash cans have a lid. And so the trash no longer could overflow. And I just randomly took this photo because, look, there's no trash on the street anymore. And this is a perfect example of how, when a community comes together and uses their voice, we can make a difference. So other ways that you can get involved in your community: become a part of a community action group. It might be something like animal rights groups or faith-based groups or other organizations in your community that are doing work. You can participate in marches or demonstrations. And we know so many people did that over the last couple of years. Black Lives Matter and so many other groups that were advocating for specific issues. You could start your own group within an organization that you're a member of. within a faith-based organization or any other organization. Write letters to your local publications about issues you're concerned with. Post on your social media. Work for a political campaign and become a leader in your community. So, getting ready to sort of wrap things up, think about this as sort of a giant checklist. And what can you do to become active as a civically engaged person in your community? And think of it as you're checking this off. Yes, I'm a registered voter. Yes, I have a voting action plan that I'm going to put in place for the next day or two, culminating Tuesday. I'm going to share this information with friends and family. I'm going to learn who my city council person is and who my community board members are. I'm going to write a letter or an email or schedule an appointment with one of my elected officials. I'm going to join a community action group. I'm going to attend a meeting. I'm going to go to a community board meeting, which actually is super easy now because they're all on Zoom. So you don't even have to show up, just you'll be able to get to it right on Zoom. And so in closing, this is a quote that I love from John Lewis, the really important civil rights advocate and also congressman. And he said, "Freedom is not a state, it is an act. It is not some enchanted garden perched high on a distant plateau where we can finally sit down and rest. Freedom is the continuous action we all must take. And each generation must do its part to create an even more fair, more just society."